glazing the Chinese firewall. So I know many people were asking, like, what's the Chinese solution to this? Well, let's take a look at what China's
countless
doing.
lazy, oversimplified videos portraying the Chinese government as an oppressive regime that brutally censors the internet to keep its population in the dark. Western media constantly pushes the narrative that Chinese internet restrictions are inherently bad, claiming that Chinese people live in an information bubble, have no knowledge of the outside world, and lack the ability to voice concerns. They're all wrong. These criticisms don't come from a place of genuine concern for the Chinese people. Instead, they stem from a deeply ingrained sense of Western superiority. The idea that the free Western internet is the golden standard and that Western democracy is the only legitimate form of governance. However, with every passing day, this claim becomes more impossible to defend. The illusion of free speech in the West is rapidly crumbling as social media platforms are openly manipulated by their billionaire owners and as Western governments increasingly suppress dissenting voices, especially when it comes to correctly critiquing them for supporting a genocide. All the way to the extent that you will lose your job, diploma, or even be deported for being mean to a country the US really likes. The reality is that China's internet firewall exists for a reason. Not about controlling the people with some devious repressive intentions in mind, but about protecting social stability, national security, and economic independence. In today's video, we're going to debunk the two biggest misconceptions about China's internet firewall. The first being, the firewall limits Chinese citizens' access to the outside world, keeps them heavily propagandized, and prevents them from understanding other political and economic systems. And number two, that Chinese people have no ability to voice concerns, critique the government, or push for change. Not only will I explain why both of these claims are completely false, but I'll also break down three major benefits of keeping the US-dominated internet infrastructure out of China without restrictions. Let's get into it. Before debunking the myths about China's internet firewall, let's first establish what it actually is and the historical reasoning behind it. According to the Chinese government, the firewall is designed to censor, block, or filter access to certain categories of content that are deemed harmful to national security and societal well-being. They include the following categories: opposing the fundamental principles of the Constitution, jeopardizing national security, leaking state secrets, subverting state power, or threatening national unity, harming the nation's honor or interests, inciting hatred, racism, or disrupting ethnic solidarity, disrupting national religious policies, promoting cults, or reviving feudal superstitions, spreading rumors, disturbing societal order, or undermining social stability, promoting obscenity, pornography, gambling, violence, murder, terrorism, or encouraging criminal activity, insulting or defaming third parties, infringing on legal rights and interests, and any other content prohibited by law or administrative regulations. The core idea behind these restrictions is preserving social cohesion and national stability. The West serves as a real-time case study of what an unfiltered anything-goes digital environment can lead to: mass polarization, disinformation, social fragmentation, and widespread mental health issues. This is the state of the modern Western internet, an unregulated, hyper-commercialized, and divisive digital space that is widely acknowledged to be harmful to mental health and social cohesion. Compare that to China's internet, which, while regulated, is structured around unity and utility. It prioritizes social stability, fosters national cohesion, and prevents the very problems that have turned much of the Western internet into a toxic battleground of ideological warfare and digital addiction. To fully grasp why China is cautious about unregulated foreign influence, we need to look at its historical context. China's modern...
For the record, many other countries don't have the expansive form of free speech absolutism that we have here in America. So, I would say that while most Western outlets greatly overemphasize like the mechanisms of control, while most Western outlets greatly overemphasize and exaggerate Chinese mechanisms of control and surveillance and domination amongst our population, I would say that they definitely, this is certainly one of the areas where I disagree with the Chinese methods. I do. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a fucking political content creator and most likely would not be able to do my job if I were to exist in China as a political dissident. But it would be dishonest of me to criticize the British government for doing similar things or the American government for doing similar things while simultaneously saying it's good when China does it. The difference, however, of course, is that I'm not Chinese, and I need to stress this over and over again. So when I criticize the American government, they're like, well, what about China? It's like, well, are you Chinese? No? Okay. Let's handle the problem here then. Anyway, let's continue.
Modern resurgence follows a century of national humiliation that lasted from 1839 to 1949. This period was marked by foreign invasions, land seizures, and economic exploitation at the hands of Western powers in Japan. One of the most devastating periods was the Opium Wars, where British waged war against China to force the population into drug addiction. When China resisted, it was brutally defeated and forced into a series of unequal treaties, ceding control over key territories like Hong Kong and granting Western powers near total economic dominance over the Chinese ports. European powers, along with the US and Japan, carved out spheres of influence within China, controlling trade and resources while the Chinese people suffered. This pattern of foreign exploitation continued well into the 20th century. China was brutally invaded by the Japanese in the 1930s, suffering atrocities like the Nanjing Massacre, where hundreds of thousands were killed. It wasn't until 1949 that China regained sovereignty under its own terms. When viewed through this historical lens, it becomes clear why China is deeply protective of its political and economic independence. Unlike Western nations that have long enjoyed global dominance, China's recent history is one of fighting to reclaim its sovereignty from foreign control. So when Western governments and corporations push for unrestricted influence within China, it is not surprising that the Chinese government and people alike view such efforts with deep skepticism. They've seen firsthand of how unchecked foreign influence can destabilize a nation, and they have no intention of letting history repeat itself. Also, you might be surprised to know that it wasn't China who kicked out American big tech corporations like Meta and Google. American companies voluntarily left the market when they wouldn't follow Chinese terms of service. Meanwhile, other major Western companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla have continued to operate in China by adapting to local regulations. This highlights a key difference in how tech restrictions are often portrayed. While the US has actively banned or restricted Chinese firms like Huawei or TikTok on national security grounds, China's approach has largely been regulatory, leaving companies with a choice to comply or exit. It is entirely understandable why the Chinese government imposes strict regulations on foreign tech companies operating within.
Okay. We've done it. A Hasanabi head has actively outflanked me on pro-China sentiment to such a degree that I am now, for the first time ever, this is a historic moment, going to correct someone on YouTube doing a pro-China video because they're glazing China too much. I can't believe it was going to happen. I never thought it would happen. Chat, you're about to watch history. To say that Facebook, Google, I hate those companies, but to say that the Facebook, Google, and all those other companies actually exited the Chinese market due to regulatory concerns is not the entire story. It's true on its face, but what are the regulatory concerns, you might add? Okay? They did leave voluntarily. This is true. That is an objectively correct statement. They did, you are dumb. But the regulatory needs of the Chinese government were perhaps to use Facebook and Google as a part of the state's surveillance apparatus. Now, the counter to that, of course, is to say, well, these companies have backdoors for the NSA, and for that you would be correct. It's just that they did not want to offer backdoors into Facebook, Google, so that the government could surveil everything that was going on with the same level of ease that they do with all of the Chinese versions of these social media applications. That's it. So technically, yes, these companies left the Chinese market voluntarily, but it was due to the demands that the Chinese government was making, and the demands that the Chinese government was making was, of course, to allow these companies to volunteer. What is your accusation? It's not an accusation. It's just what the Chinese government's demands were. Whether you consider it to be appropriate or not is up to you.
Its borders. Western governments and intelligence agencies have repeatedly used these platforms to influence political movements, destabilize governments, and push for regime change in countries that refuse to align with their interests. This isn't speculation. It's a well-documented strategy that has been carried out numerous times, from Ukraine and Georgia to Romania, many Latin American nations, and beyond.
One doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup?
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat.
In fact, Western officials and organizations openly discuss and allocate substantial funding towards these goals, framing them as democracy promotion or support for civil society.
First, we thought that getting Guaido to declare himself president would be enough to topple a regime. Then we thought putting aid on the border would be enough. Then we tried to sort of construct a kind of coup in April of last year, and it blew up in our face when all the generals that were supposed to break with Maduro decided to stick with him in the end. We undermined Norway's talks last summer, and then this March we released a transition framework that frankly is almost a carbon copy of the very one that was in front of the parties last year.
When it comes to China, they're not even subtle about their intentions. Think tanks, government agencies, and media outlets frequently call for strategies to weaken or alter the Chinese political system.
This is true.
Given this context, it's hardly surprising that China enforces strict digital sovereignty policies, ensuring that foreign tech companies operating within its borders cannot be used as tools for external political interference. Just last year, the House passed $1.6 billion to deliver anti-China propaganda overseas. Knowing all this, how can you look at that and be like, yep, better let all that shit in without any restrictions? You really can't blame the government for looking out for its own national interest. If there was a similar authenticated legitimate threat to the US government, you can damn well expect they would crack down on it too. Now that we've established the firewall, what it does, and its context, let's debunk the common misconceptions around it. Starting with the first one, that the firewall limits Chinese citizens' access to the outside world, keeps them heavily propagandized, and prevents them from understanding other political and economic systems. Western critics love to claim that the people of China don't have access to the internet, that they're completely cut off from platforms like TikTok and YouTube. The way they describe it, you'd think that the Chinese are living in the Stone Age. This is complete nonsense. China has built their own internet ecosystem that mirrors every function of the Western internet. They have their own versions of Google, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and every other major platform you can think of. These apps offer nearly identical experiences. On China's version of TikTok, you'll find the same mix of trends, gaming content, food vlogs, and cringe dance videos. Their version of YouTube, Bilibili, hosts everything from nature documentaries, in-depth political analysis, food bloggers, and travel vlogs. What's especially interesting is the political content. A lot of Westerners might assume that Chinese platforms are filled with anti-American rhetoric, but that's not the case. In fact, political content is relatively balanced, and if anything, there's even a slightly positive view of America. The harshest takes you'll find tend to be lighthearted or comedic, poking fun at the absurdity of certain American politicians. Surprisingly, Trump is actually quite popular, with Chinese users often finding him funny or entertaining. You'll see edits of him at speeches and clips where he's treated more like a meme than a villain.
Okay, absolutely. Melania said this was okay.
I just got a nice co-star here.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it a $1.50. If I was fucking Chinese, I would also love Donald Trump. The great nation builder for China. Donald Trump, the man who is bringing about the century of humiliation to America almost single-handedly. If you are a netizen of a foreign adversary state, why wouldn't you enjoy that? Not only do you not experience the repercussions, but you also are simultaneously watching America fucking cook itself. Well, because of your humanity, do you think that, I mean, first of all, because of your humanity, talk to the average person about what they think about China and Xi Jinping. Why would it be any different on the other side?
China, 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 China. Let's say China, 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 China. Now, you know,
while Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe. And I'm proud of what he did.
the World Trade Center came down.
He had the gall to go after
特朗普女的一巴掌，男的更是2巴掌。
Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. You know what I do with him?
Bro, what the fuck? The meme culture the meme culture in China is so crazy, is so strange to me. Like, yeah, we got brain rot, but their brain rot is also weird.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. You will never make it. Go ahead.
Meanwhile, on Western platforms, it's become a whole genre to predict China's imminent collapse, with video after video pushing the same doomsday narratives. You won't find hundreds of "why America will collapse" videos on Chinese social media, even though there are plenty of valid criticisms that could be made. Political discussions are less aggressive, and when they do happen, they tend to be more good faith discussions rather than fear-mongering or propaganda. This just goes to show how much Western media relies on people's lack of knowledge about the country to paint China as the enemy.
Well, they don't have to
sincerity with which
fear-monger.
Chinese people engage in diplomacy and discuss global affairs on their platforms feels like
To be fair, we have to fearmonger. They don't have to fearmonger. They can just literally point to what America is doing, both against China and everywhere else. Like, that's just the reality. That's what happens when you are the dominant world power. The dominant world power has no real enemies, only perceived ones, so that it can continue its dominance. Other global powers that are rising up already are rising up within that framework, and therefore don't need to make up shit about America to get mad about America. They can just like point to things America's doing to them.
someone extending a handshake only to get a punch in the face in return. The whole idea that Chinese people are cut off from the modern world is laughable. And if anything, it's Westerners who are in the dark about what life in China is really like. The brief TikTok ban showed this perfectly, as some Americans who migrated to Chinese platforms discovered that life in China is modern, affordable, and that locals are generally warm and welcoming to foreigners. If you don't believe me, go check out Xiaohongshu, or Red Note as it's called in English, or Bilibili to see for yourself what Chinese social media is actually like. You might be surprised at what you might find.
I really think America has made a huge mistake when banning this app, because now that we're all on Red Note, we're actually learning that a lot of the crap that they've been talking about China is absolutely not true. We're like, wait a second, you guys have universal healthcare? You don't have to pay for an ambulance when you get picked up to the hospital. You have amazing cars for very low prices. Huawei, the amazing phones they have, are also so much better than iPhones. And all of that is forbidden here. We cannot have any of that. Wait a second, you can walk at night outside and not be afraid? There's no mass unalivings in schools? What? What's that like? And I had someone comment on my Red Note being like, now that you're here, I hope you can see that we're not the beasts that, you know, your news made us seem to be. And I was like,
Americans find out government follows basic functions of good governance, loses their minds. It's so funny because, like, this is not just China. I mean, it's extra funny to do this about China because America's, like, consistently lied about China, whatever. But Americans genuinely forget that, like, other countries exist, because half the shit she's talking about here is, like, European capitals as well. You can point to, not even Europe, like, developing nations have implemented some of these protections that she's talking about with far less money and resources. It's not a matter it's not a matter of money. It's not a problem with money. It's a problem with capitalism. That's it.
Like, we never thought you guys were. I feel like we always knew it was bullshit. And yeah, no country's perfect. There's a lot of issues everywhere in this world. But it's very interesting. We're learning much more, I think, than they wanted us to know.
And yeah, here we are learning about how affordable their cost of living is. How 90% of people in China own the place that they live in. How they don't really have homeless people. They don't have a drug problem. Like, their groceries are affordable. They only have to work one job in order to pay their bills. They were confused about having to pay for an ambulance ride. They literally have universal health care. Our government decided that in order to get us to not want communism, they had to make it seem like it was this big, scary, crazy thing, and to basically shield us from it. And Look, we're literally talking to people that live under that type of government, and they're happy. They're happy, and they cannot believe how Americans are letting America run. And they feel sorry for us. That's sad.
Chinese people are also some of the most well-traveled in the world. In 2023 alone, mainland Chinese citizens made 206 million international trips. To put that into perspective, the entire population of the United States is about 345 million. And yet, despite experiencing the world firsthand, all 206 million of those Chinese travelers chose to come home. Not because they were forced to, but because the quality of life in China is high. Beyond tourism, China has one of the largest groups of international students in the world. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Chinese students enroll in Western universities, gaining access to a vast range of academic perspectives, many of which are openly critical of China. Yet after spending years immersed in these environments, 90% of them return home. Tens of millions of Chinese citizens have studied abroad or are currently pursuing degrees in the West.
I do find it really funny because, like, for the longest time, people basically, I guess without the internet being so popular, people were just like able to just lie. I don't know what changed in the last like decade. I think like people recognized America's imminent demise. So they started paying attention to like, as the less you trust your own government, the more you listen to what it's saying and you go, wait a minute, is that wrong? And I think a part of that is social media, and a part of that is like that broader feeling of instability and, dare I say, resentment towards the institutions that cause people to look at China and go, what the fuck? You guys were just lying about everything. Because it's not like it's not like Chinese people are inaccessible. It's a massive country. They're fucking everywhere. And yet, for some reason, Americans just never chose to ask, like, what do you think about your country? Now, of course, I don't know how honest a Chinese person would be about their own government in America, I mean, because, you know, there's a lot of racism. I know this from my own personal experience talking to Water, Jake's girlfriend, who is Chinese. When I was like literally glazing China and asking her about China, she thought I was fucking with her. She literally was like, oh, she thought I was messing with her because she had never heard like an American white guy actively, I guess with the exception of Jake, like actively be like, no, I think these are the good things about China. Anyway, it's just funny to me that like we act as though it's impossible to figure out what things are like over there. And it's much better to just consistently fantasize about the imminent demise of China instead and watch a million different YouTube videos about like the collapse of China.
The idea that they're simply brainwashed or lack knowledge to the outside world, especially when compared to Americans, is completely unfounded. In fact, I would confidently argue that the average Chinese citizen, particularly young people, have a far more accurate understanding of global affairs than an average American. China's education system, despite its intensity, is one of the best in the world. In my personal conversations with Chinese people, I found that they often have a stronger grasp of current geopolitics, world history, and even American history than many Americans themselves. Check out interviews on the channel Asian Boss and see how informed they are. Chinese students are taught about key moments in US history from the Revolutionary War to the Civil Rights Movement and generally have a nuanced understanding of how different political systems function. Ironically, while Americans tend to see communism through the lens of decades of Cold War era propaganda, Chinese people actually approach the topic with a more balanced, pragmatic perspective. They don't just
I'm gonna go back again and say this. You don't need to do propaganda about America and its ways. You can just do an accurate reflection of events, and that will be enough for people to go, oh, I don't like that. The propaganda in China, in the education system, revolves around, and this is not dissimilar to any other country. I'm not singling out China for this, so don't yell at me. The propaganda is about Chinese history. just like we do the same thing here in the United States of America, an inaccurate reflection of events, or at least some omissions that I would say are ridiculous. Like, I genuinely feel like most American, example, Washington, George Washington. He was a fucking slave owner, and not a nice one either. This doesn't mean everything he did was bad. You know, I'm in favor of the Revolutionary War. Fuck the English, but also he was a slave owner. He enslaved people and then he moved them around. There are also so many. Not a nice one either is crazy work. No, the reason why I'm saying that is because that is the way that they describe it. I'm directly countering. I am directly countering the narrative in the books. There is no way to be a nice slave owner, but the way that they describe it in the history books is to make it seem as though this was like, there was reasonable debate. There was spirited debate. You know, like this is, he wasn't the worst guy. Like they portray him positively. That's what I mean. I'm directly countering the fucking insane narrative, not making a value judgment about like nice slave owners. That's not a thing. Of course.
Blindly claim that communism is superior, nor do they try to impose their ideology on others. Instead, it's often Westerners who feel the need to aggressively defend capitalism and impose their worldview on Chinese people. The reality is that Chinese people simply believe that their system works for their country, while Americans, despite being typically less informed, tend to be far more defensive about their own system. That being said, Chinese people are generally far less political than Americans. This isn't just unique to China, it's a broader trend across East Asia and Japan and Korea as well, compared to the US, where people across the political spectrum, young and old, are deeply ingrained in political debates. The average Chinese citizen simply doesn't think about politics on a daily basis. Instead, their focus is on education, work, family, and enjoying life. And in many ways, this is one of the strongest endorsements of China's political system, the fact that it doesn't need to dominate people's lives. Government only becomes a major concern when it is actively failing, when policies are harming people's livelihoods, when institutions are ineffective.
That's not true, man. Because they can't participate in politics is just not true. I mean, he's glazing too. Yeah, no. It's just a government assignment that they came up with on their own. Xi Jinping personally handpicks every single person in the country that is going to be a part of the CCP's power structure.
Effective, or when systematic issues create widespread frustration. In China, the fact that most people don't feel the need to engage in constant political discourse is in itself evidence of a functional and effective system. They don't have to fight for basic necessities or worry about whether their government will provide stability, it simply does. As a result, there's a baseline level of trust that allows people to focus on their personal ambitions rather than constantly questioning whether their government is working for them. Contrast that with the United States, where politics is inescapable because so many people feel personally impacted, whether through stagnant wages.
Okay, this is so much China glaze. Okay, wow. Wow, that's not true. That's objectively not true. Chinese people are very much aware that they're under an umbrella of broad surveillance down to the fucking random civilian aunties and uncles. But you know what else Chinese people are very much aware of? Unimaginable prosperity and development that has taken root in China over the course of the past couple of decades. This is the real reason why they don't give a fuck, in spite of the political repression, or not even political suppression, but like mass surveillance, for example. That's it. The idea that they don't care about politics is also wrong. They quite literally have rebellions every now and then, mini ones, mini versions of it, but it's just untrue to say that people are not upset with their government and also decide to take action. They do. They do protests. The protests get aggro. Never to the same degree as like American protests. But the reason why I said rebellion, I should have clarified what I mean. The reason why I said rebellion is because a government that functions with a level of authority, Hasan just lying now, rebellions. I meant protests, and I'm wrong to say rebellion. I'm going to explain to you why I chose the word rebellion, because it's something that I describe all the time. Okay, there's normal dissent, there's active protests and things of that nature, but the reason why I was going to talk about fucking quote unquote rebellion is because a government that is more hands-on and is always an ever-present point of authority, like the Chinese government, as opposed to like neoliberal mechanisms of control, for example, because they're both authoritarian in different ways. But a government that is like always there and that the citizens are aware of, and even like actively self-censor, for example, and doesn't say certain things, knowing full well that, you know, they might like get banned off of a platform that they can't use any longer. And then like that cooks a lot of their regular experiences throughout the day. That is way more ripe for rebellion, which is precisely the reason why the government has a government that wants to maintain its control over the population has to always be receptive to the desires of its population in order to avoid a rebellion. Does that make sense? If China was this like authoritarian nightmare that is completely fucking destroying its citizens and like killing people, blah, 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 all this stuff. If that was true, then these guys they're not stupid. They know that they're being surveilled, for example. They would fucking revolt. They would have a rebellion. That's why I use the word rebellion. They don't.
Affordable healthcare, rising cost of living, or a political system that often seems more focused on culture wars than solving real problems. Do you really think Americans would be this obsessed with elections or hyperfixated on every new political controversy if they actually trusted their government to function properly? Of course not. The intensity of political engagement in the US isn't a sign of a healthy democracy. It's a symptom of a system that repeatedly fails its people. Meanwhile, in China, the vast majority of people, politics is simply not a priority because it doesn't have to be. Okay, so Chinese people have their own internet ecosystem, they're highly educated, and they travel the world. But what about censorship? When it comes to censorship, Chinese people are very aware of what they can and can't post online. The government is very clear about what's off limits: sedition against the government, racism, pornography, and all the other things mentioned in the beginning. It's straightforward, and the rules are well known. The difference is that in China, censorship is explicit and people understand it as part of the broader structure. In the West, however, censorship is often arbitrary and used to reinforce the dominant narratives pushed by powerful elites. Over the past few years, we've witnessed the unraveling of Western ideals of free speech and a free internet. The most recent example of this have been the systematic suppression of pro-Palestinian content, as well as cover-ups of war crimes in Gaza. For years, Western media outlets like the New York Times and platforms like Meta have controlled the narrative by limiting access to certain information and shaping public perception. But one platform that couldn't be fully controlled was TikTok, which...
What? Why does your argument not reply to Russia? Honestly curious. Because the average improvement on the material realities of like a regular working class person in China over the course of the past 30 years has been incredible, as opposed to Russia. And also Russia is, I would say, more authoritarian and less democratic than even China is. Because at least in China, there's like local governance that is incredibly fucking hands-on. I would say even more hands-on than like American local governance. And that ultimately they bring all of the concerns that the citizens have to the local government all the way up to the fucking party infrastructure, even though there's like technically, oh, it's just the CCP. There's like dissidents as well, but it doesn't really matter. It's marginal. It's irrelevant. But the real politics, the real domestic politics is happening at the point of local policymakers, local legislators, local regulators. Russia does not have a version of that. It's just fake. Like, Russia is an open oligarchy. Unless you personally believe that, like, what, 90%, 98% of Russians voted for Vladimir Putin or something. What is this? This could have applied to the USSR in the 50s, not anymore. Yeah.
Allowed an entirely new generation to get access to information about the genocide in Gaza. This became a massive ongoing battle to ban or censor the content that was circulating on the app. In the US, the media landscape is becoming more and more consolidated, with powerful players like Jeff Bezos using outlets like the Washington Post to promote narratives that serve their own interests. Recently, Bezos issued a directive to the Post requiring coverage that promotes personal liberties and free markets, essentially signaling that the narrative is being carefully curated to maintain the status quo of the American oligarchy. Then there's Twitter, which brands itself as the #1 free speech site, yet is anything but free speech. Like all American social media platforms, Twitter is entirely at the mercy of its billionaire owners. Elon Musk, for instance, has been known to boost far-right accounts, support political parties like the AfD in Germany, and ban or unverify users who disagree with him. Rather than a platform that fosters open dialogue, Twitter has become a toxic cesspool where far-right extremists thrive, promoting everything from race science to conspiracy theories, as long as it serves Musk's personal agenda. Although Chinese censorship is real and targeted, if anything, Western censorship is more insidious, operating under the guise of free speech while serving corporate interests. China's censorship is public and predictable, and for the vast majority of Chinese internet users and instances, censorship is irrelevant to their online experience. Now let's get to the major key that underlines this entire conversation. You can always get a VPN. A VPN allows you to access the internet in China just as you would anywhere in the world. Which brings us to today's sponsor. No, I'm fucking with you, there's no sponsor. But there is a Patreon as per request, so if you want to check that out, go ahead, thank you. But in all seriousness, if you're in China and you want to look at the Western internet, the barriers to do so are not large at all. I like this system a lot because many people won't learn about.
Are you fucking serious, Amon? China censors LGBT content, the whole fanfiction site AO3 is banned, and that user keeps defending it? That's what's going on? Wait, what? Out of all... hold on. Out of all of the things that you could fucking criticize the Chinese government's censorship over, specifically as it pertains to LGBT, depictions of like LGBT people or whatever, which would be a lie. You can be openly fucking gay on Chinese applications and whatnot. You chose AO3? You chose China banning AO3. China would not let me go on Wattpad and write about Yowie, Donald Trump Yowie. This is unacceptable. You're being girly pop phobic? Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, that's funny. What about my Mao X dang toxic Yowie? Oh, man. All right. Haas, you don't understand. I need my cyber mommy.
And then install a VPN until college when they are much more mature and able to approach the Western internet in a much better way. The default internet is so much better as a general internet for society. Even if you have no problem with pornography or violence being so accessible, I think we can all agree that it's not good for people at such young ages to be.
I will say this. I think American internet has gotten to such a fucking degree of instability and like unrestricted, unlimited Nazi shit that like low key, the fucking firewall might be a preferable alternative for children, especially as they're developing. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Dude, it's fucked up. I know the whole argument that Taylor was presenting is like, the government should not get to dictate what children are looking at. The problem is, I trust the Chinese government to make that decision more than I trust the American government. And this is not me China glazing. This is me just feeling so sad about the state of affairs in this fucking country. It is actually wild. It's actually wild how bad the situation is online for American children in general. Yeah, Grok and Meta will protect our kids. Yeah, Meta. Here, I'll give you an example. Recently, it came out that Meta was implementing chatbots with no restrictions as it pertains to flirting with children. Okay? Flirting with children. Now, Grok, obviously, you know, is Mecha Hitler. So there's that. But like, think about that. That's who we have that's unlimited, unrestricted access to that. I mean, that's crazy. Every time I get mad, every time I get fucking mad at like Google for doing some fuck shit or Twitter for doing some fuck shit, Facebook comes out of nowhere, Meta comes out of nowhere and is like, nah, we are the real evil here. Trust. It's like they're on an active, they're in an active competition with one another on who gets to be the bigger Nazi pedophile platform. It doesn't make any sense. I asked Grok about Meta and he told me that the genocide in South Africa is not approving of Meta flirting with children. Yeah, their ethics officers signed off on their rules. Their whole job is ethics. We're cooked. Meta's AI rules have let bots hold sensual chats with kids, offer false medical info. I mean, seriously, like, I don't think the Chinese methods are the best. Okay, I don't. This is an active disagreement that I have. This is something that I actually criticize the Chinese government on all the time, which is like, you know, there are certain forms of repression that the Chinese government engages in, especially censorship, especially mass surveillance, that I don't think is good. But like, is it better than this? I don't know. It might be better than this. Like, can we not have this? I don't want the other thing either, but this I definitely don't want. You know? I don't want this. I don't want this at all. So please, let's stop this. It's doubly fucked because we don't even do anything that the Chinese government does that's good, and we basically do things that we either ascribe to the Chinese government or the things that the Chinese government are doing that are bad. We literally look at a million different policies implemented by the Chinese government that are objectively good, and we should do it here, okay? And we say, nah, that is woke and gay. Defending one of the worst parts of the Chinese government is crazy. Yeah, this shit is insane. It's like the Chinese guy making a video titled "Why the American Patriot Act is a Good Thing." Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot. I don't even necessarily. I'm not necessarily saying that this person is. I'm not fully in agreement with what this guy is saying, but I think as far as like actively going against the narratives that you hear in the Western world about like how what kind of forms of censorship exist and stuff like that, I think it's fine. It's valid. He does get absolutely heavy-handed, and I don't know if I agree with his ultimate conclusion anyway. But I wouldn't say this is like evil. Like what if you just look at the if you just look at the title of it, you get duped by it, then yeah, sure, I understand why you would feel that way, but he is he's definitely going through and detailing like what people get wrong.
Accessing that type of content. I know that I certainly would have benefited from not seeing pornography and executions from literally the age of 7 years old. The VPN is always accessible for those who want to use the Western internet, but I think it's great that the default internet is the way that it is. Now for the question I know you've all been thinking.
Like some kind of restriction for minors online, I think is good. I don't even think it's like fucked up or evil. I think it's good. Okay? I don't even think it's like gray area shit. It's just that I don't think that the appropriate mechanisms is to literally make sure that everyone has an ID on them at all times. And then the ID is like stored somewhere. You know what I mean? Like that is crazy. Anyway.
What about Tiananmen Square? The event itself is a topic that deserves its own video, which will come, but let's address it briefly since I know it's likely on your mind. Despite this event being censored on the Chinese internet, many Chinese people, especially older generations, are still aware of what happened. But let's take a step back and look at how Tiananmen Square is used in the narrative against China today. If you look at the comment section of any video that talks positively about China, chances are one of the top comments will be, "What about Tiananmen Square?" As if they've just delivered the ultimate big brain original.
I think it is kind of funny that the American government, like Americans living in the United States of America constantly put this diss out there where they're like, what about Tiananmen Square? Fucking got him. And it's like, dude, our cops kill 1,000 Americans every year, dude. Every fucking year. Like, this isn't to glaze China when they fuck up, okay? Make no mistake, but we kill 1,000 Americans a year. Our police force kills 1,000 Americans every fucking year. I think our cops kill what, like 10 dogs a day? American police departments kill 10 dogs a day, 10 pets a day, not just dogs. Anyway, so the idea like where they're like, hey, remember that historic event of government suppression is just funny to fucking point to when we live in America, man. We live in America. What do you mean? I went to the fucking protest. I went to the goddamn protest this fucking a couple months ago. They were deploying chemical weapons that are deemed illegal in war on the captive civilian population. That's what they were doing. They were using techniques that they learned from the IDF, kettling and corralling against civilians who were like, don't fucking kidnap my neighbor, bro. Do I have to say it's Chinese for you to understand how fucked that is? Oh, dude, it's fine when we do it here. It's crazy when it's Chinese, though. Like, it's cool when we do it here. I just don't want it to be like Chinese style. That was my fault. I'm just racist.
Take.
Yeah, we got the literal fucking military. We have the literal military in DC also. This is my favorite quote. People just being like, oh, it's just LED lights, you fucking idiot. Oh, you're so stupid. You only care about LED lights.
Although it was a tragedy, let's be real. This single event, which took place nearly 40 years ago, is used to discredit every Chinese achievement, bolster the narrative of Western superiority.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, we did the move bombing, bro. Look at us. This week marked the 40th anniversary of one of the worst tragedies in Philadelphia's history. In May 1985, the city's police department dropped an improvised bomb, which was a bag filled to the brim with C4 on a residential home that housed the Black Revolutionary Organization MOVE. The bomb and ensuing fire killed 11 people, including 5 children, and destroyed more than 60 nearby homes. But if you think that was the most insane shit, hold on, it gets worse. I think it was Princeton. I don't want to get the Institute of Higher Learning, the name incorrectly. They took the remains and kept it. There was an American college that kept the remains of the Africa family after the fucking government shredded the family. They stole the bones, brother. It was Penn. Okay, it wasn't Princeton. Sorry. Yes. Yes. That's not from like slave times, dude. That's like 1985. That's 6 years before I was born. Only recently did they actually release the bones. I'll tell you one step. I'll take it one step further. Police chief at the time goes, was it police chief or the fire chief at the time when the bombing happened and the fires were fucking raging? Okay. And they were like, yo, we got to go in. We got to go in. This is like, the fires are getting out of control. He said, let it burn. Oh, it was the Penn Museum and Princeton University, just to be clear. Hey, there we go. I wasn't wrong. Okay. So, like, just because you didn't learn about this or all of the existing current forms of police brutality and the defense of that doesn't change the reality. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just cope. Like, it's cope. It's cope. It's cope. It's pure cope. We're like, oh, dude, remember Tiananmen Square? It's like, I do. I know. Do you know anything that happens in America with regular frequency? I'm not fucking Chinese, dog. I'm not in the business of defending Tiananmen Square or Xinjiang. I don't give a fuck, okay? As an American citizen, I'm telling you about America, like homegrown, whole-ass American versions of what you are ascribing to China, okay? What you're saying China is doing, we're fucking doing here. And you're in the process of telling me it's okay because China's doing the same shit, apparently.
And dismiss the entirety of China as a whole. The West has expertly leveraged this single tragedy by China to deflect from their own historical and ongoing atrocities. Now, what's fascinating to me is that applying the same standards of violence to discredit a government, the West's record is unimaginably worse. Since its establishment in 1949, China, with the exception of Tiananmen Square and one border skirmish with Vietnam, has risen overwhelmingly peacefully. Even if we take the largest Western estimates of Tiananmen Square and say that thousands upon thousands.
Can you describe how the leaders of Tiananmen Square protests ended up in the United States? You'd assume they were disappeared or killed, right? I can. It's called, well, I was just about to say Ashley Babbitt, but then I remembered Donald Trump released everyone that went to prison for January 6th. For a second, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, a similar thing happened in America. Like, you know, you could point to like January 6th. And then I realized, oh shit, those guys actually literally were released from prison. I don't mean this as a positive, okay? I'm not saying that this is a positive thing. I just mean that like similar incidents have taken place in the United States of America. And the one time when violence was totally permissible, they didn't do it. And not only did they not do it, but they became fucking prison abolitionists out of nowhere. Top G's a cool name. I agree. Got fucking Chinese firewalled, baby. Get fucked. What is this? China in 2 minutes? Ain't no fucking way. Ain't no fucking way you just sent me an unlisted link from your YouTube page that you made me an edit for. Ain't no fucking way I'm watching that. It's age restricted. It's literally age restricted. Are you trying to get me fucking banned, dude? Are you insane? I love Top G, but I do not trust that video. One of the mods needs to check that first.
Died. This is still a drop of water compared to the ocean of death caused by Western intervention around the world. Not even considering the horrors of colonization and slavery, millions of people have died in Western-led wars in the modern era. The Iraq War, the Afghanistan conflict, the Vietnam War alone accounted for millions of deaths. The total death toll of these conflicts is staggering, with estimates around 1 million people dying in Iraq alone, over 170,000 in Afghanistan, and 2 to 3 million in Vietnam. And those are just the wars Americans generally know about. How many know that during the Korean
I think the bigger L with China's border skirmish with Vietnam was what it was over, what it was slated to protect, okay? We don't talk about that. That's all I'm going to say. I think I might prefer China's non-interventionist policy currently as opposed to its interventionist policy that was very good and totally justifiable in Korea and maybe not so good and not so justifiable in, I don't know, Pol Pot. Not great, you know? You got to take the good and you got to take the bad, okay? Let's be real. They don't have exactly the best track record, all right? The one time they were like, yeah, we're actively getting involved in this. It was literally for the worst possible thing that you could do. Chatter's vid is a timeline of China. 3D design is my passion edit, but nice. Wait, really? Is this the same Top G that always shits on me? Did he actually low-key made like a passion passion project? and he's being nice. It has gore in it. Oh, you son of a bitch. Don't watch, there's dead people in the video? God damn it. God damn it, Top G. Of course. Why can't your haters be more like Top G? There are historical images that are published in museums. Yeah, but I can't show it. Or some of it, I don't think. Anyway, I'll look at it. I'll check it. I'll watch it afterwards.
In war, the US dropped more bombs and napalm on Korea than were used in the entire Pacific theater of World War II. In fact, 75% of North Korean towns...
What about Winnie the Pooh stuff? Genuine question. I mean, you can say Winnie the Pooh in China if that's what you're asking. I'm pretty sure there was definitely. They were just using that as a way to shit on Big G for a little bit. But yeah, if you go to Shanghai Disney, they like literally sell Winnie the Pooh stuff. No, I think that person is not being mean. I think that person is like actually asking.
And cities were destroyed by US bombings, killing 2 to 3 million, with 70% of the deaths being civilians. How many young Americans are aware of the My Lai massacre, where 504 civilians, mostly women and children, were sexually assaulted and murdered by US Army soldiers? I just recently traveled to Laos. How many people know that American bombers dropped bombs on Laos for nearly a decade from 1964 to 1973, all the while keeping it completely secret from its own people?
Big L for China was honestly collaborating at any capacity with the American government past the point of World War II. That was the biggest L, I think. They should have just kept out of all of that. Non-interventionists, if you want to be. I just popped in with this video. Feels like silly whataboutism. Of course, the U.S. government has no ground to stand on talking about Chinese abuses, but random people like you and me aren't. The U.S. government can be consistent in opposing human rights abuses and crimes against other countries, no matter who was committing it. What matters is being consistent and not singling out China or downplaying U.S. crimes for imperialist purposes. Cloud District Enjoyer is going back to his fucking old ways, okay? He's been so good for so long. He's going back to his old ways. Let me tell you why, okay? So, first of all, ironically enough, the people that say whataboutism are the ones who are usually engaging in whataboutism. And yes, while people can be morally consistent, I think Americans use the shit that the Chinese government has done, like mechanisms of oppression, forms of oppression, or even like outright violence that the Chinese government has engaged in, as a way to shelter Americans from the responsibility of bearing witness to our crimes, which are, and this is objectively true, magnitudes worse, right? I don't think anyone in this community, regardless of how much I shit on China or regardless of how much you shit on China, would ever fucking turn around and say America's crimes around the globe are not magnitudes worse than what China has done throughout its history. Like orders of magnitude, I would say. It's not even a question. Like there's no... Nah, our violence is patriotic. I mean, there's no country that comes close. Maybe England, actually. England is, I mean, the British Empire was pretty fucking bad. I would even go so far as to say the British Empire is low-key kind of, it brought about America. It's almost like a continuation of the British Empire. powers around the globe that have done like horrifying fucking crimes. Hello, 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 hello. Hello? It's Twitch wide? Oh, really? Wait, what the fuck was that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello. Type 3, type 3, type 3, type 3, type 3, type 3. Okay, there's like a 3-4 second delay. Okay. I don't know what the fuck just took place. That was crazy. But I guess like Twitch pooped or something, or specifically LA Twitch pooped. It seems people are saying that like all of the LA Twitch streamers like went down at the same time. Ludwig was down too. That was crazy. Technically speaking, he's on the San Jose West Coast ingest. Yeah. I've been replaced by a clone. You know what it was? I think Jason's bitrate sucked up everyone else's bitrate for a brief moment, and we just lost everything. You know what I mean? Like nephew had too much bitrate that it took over the entirety of the LA infrastructure. This is what happens when he tries to go 8K. Anyway, the point I was making before I got fucking interrupted by the EMP bomb that exploded, the point I was trying to make was, it's kind of like when we talk about the Houthis, okay? When people say like, oh, well, the Houthis, they're bad. They have like on their own domestic governance, they're actually bad. They do like, they're homophobic, they're anti-women, this and that. And it's like, that has no basis. Like their internal governance is not up to me at all. Nobody's saying that. No, people use that as a way to try to fucking disparage their actions against Israel. The reason why I criticize China, for the record, is because I think their material conditions have developed to such a degree that I think it's understandable to be more critical of China as opposed to like the Houthis. You know, I just want to be clear that I do not hate China, and I think it has a lot of great aspects and contributions to its people and to the world. I think it's frustrating when good faith criticism of certain policies get lumped in with bad faith liberals who want to delegitimize and demonize China. Thanks for listening. I'm glad I get to offer my perspective sometimes.
It dropped a plane full of bombs on the country every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 9 years. During this campaign on Laos, which is only an area the size of Oregon, villages of innocent villagers who had no involvement in the Vietnam War lived in misery for a decade. bombers were simply ordered to go out and bomb without even having targets. As a result, Laos is the most bombed country per capita in history. Over 200 million unexploded bombs still litter the land, causing injuries and deaths to this day. This isn't just abroad too. How many Americans today know that the US dropped a bomb on a black neighborhood in Philadelphia, killing 11 people, 5 of whom children? Or the Kent State massacre of student protesters protesting the Vietnam War. This information is technically available, but how many Americans know about this or even care? How many even know what Laos is? Your average young Chinese person might not know about the hundreds of lives lost at Tiananmen Square in 1989. Your average American knows about a fraction of the millions of lives ended by his or her government, which has continued far past 1989 to the present day as I'm speaking these words. You tell me which is worse. And it's not just the US. Look at Japan's actions in World War II. They murdered up to 20 million Chinese civilians during the invasion of China. Yet we have very little historical remembrance of their crimes, especially compared to Nazi Germany, even when they killed millions more people. The Japanese government actively hides these atrocities from their citizens and still honors the soldiers responsible. This fact gets zero attention in the media because Japan remains subservient to the US. Ask yourselves, why don't you see destruction of Nanking as the top comment under the next travel video you see about Japan? Their youth are woefully unaware of this fact, and it's orders of magnitude worse than Tiananmen Square. This isn't simple whataboutism.
Yeah, I mean, that's... Yeah, that, like, the Japanese war crimes are... It's just Holocaust, but Japanese style. Like, it's just not... There's no other way to put it. It's not... It is pretty crazy that they went the drama YouTuber method with that one, where they just were like, yeah, nothing happened there, let's move on. And they just like never took an L for it. And they just kind of moved on with it, and now nobody ever brings it up. Arguably worse, human experimentation? No, they did that in the Holocaust too. What do you mean? They definitely also did that in the Holocaust. So, yes.
Like the countless Western atrocities, Tiananmen Square is used to discredit every single Chinese achievement and label the entire country with the same brush. We judge China by its worst mistake and America by...
I think one of the craziest problems with that one too, one of the craziest reasons why people don't even fucking talk about that shit is because the craziest reason why they got away with it is not because they just like swept it under the rug and was just like acted like that never happened, but also because America did not even offer adequate punishments for it, because they took all of the biological and chemical warfare data. That was the trade-off. The people that participated in those war crimes were not even punished because America was like, oh, we want the data. We want to use this shit. And they did. They did use that shit. They used it in Korea. It's not even just the nuking. No, it's not. It's not. The nuke probably played a role in this too, where everyone was like, oh shit, maybe America went a little too far, you know? Like, it was kind of like, oh, dude, what the fuck? Like, yeah, they're really bad guys, but come on now. Well, this just happened, a shrine celebrating it. Video, Tokyo Yasukuni Shrine opening its gates on August 15, 2025, the 80th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II. Many people visit the shrine today, which honors Japan's war dead, including Class A war criminals from... Is it back? Is it back? Hello, am I back? Okay, I'm back. Spam 5 if you see this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, there's like a 5-second delay. That's crazy. Dude, I feel bad. I feel real fucking bad for Ludwig. that's got to fucking suck when you put together this like massive event. That is ass, dude. It broke again. Is it cooking again? Maybe it's just me. No, we're good. Okay. All right. Hold on. I'm gonna. We good? I just wanted to fix the delay. All right, let's continue with this video.
By its latest. You could use the same logic in commenting Hiroshima and Nagasaki under any positive video of America. We hold utopian standards for China simply because it has a different economic system. The relatively much fewer mistakes that they have made in the past is used to discredit its governance system, never the other way around. Now let's debunk misconception number 2, that Chinese people have no ability to voice concerns, critique the government, or push for change. A major critique of China's firewall is that it removes the right to criticize the government. In the US, freedom of speech is a core belief. People can say whatever they want about their leaders. But does this actually lead to change? Or are people just screaming into the void? If you're complaining about the government online, the assumption is that you want those issues addressed. Otherwise, you're just venting into empty space. And in the US, that's exactly what happens. Professors Martin Gillens from Princeton University and Benjamin...
I think that is a mechanism of control. That like fake freedom that Americans feel they have plays a formative role in assuming that you have these freedoms. That's it. It's the treat economy. It's that. That's it. Ultimately, in America, capital controls the government. In China, the government controls capital. Okay? All initiatives that the government engages in is at the behest of profits over people. That's it. The Chinese government might be at odds with the people at times, and that's certainly a reality, right? But by and large, the direction that they take is always improving, is always focused on improving the material conditions of Chinese citizens. I find it strange that Americans care so much about our freedom of speech, but want to surround our country with military bases and cripple our development. Yeah, I mean, it's all fucking bullshit. The American government's attitude towards China is just entirely hypocritical.
Page from Northwestern University analyzed over 20 years of data on federal policy decisions to answer...
No government can control capital. Well, they're doing it pretty good in China, okay?
A simple question. Does the US government represent its people? The answer was a resounding no. Their research showed that affluent Americans, corporations, and special interest groups have far more influence over policy than ordinary citizens. Even when 70% of Americans support a policy change, it only has about a 40% chance of being implemented. In short, the US functions much more like an oligarchy, not a democracy. In the US, you can post all day about government failures, crumbling infrastructure, unaffordable healthcare, stagnant wages, endless wars, but none of it will make a difference. You are yelling into the void.
Give me some cops! Can you unsee your my head! You hit that tree head! You just hit my head! On the concrete! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Okay, let's go, folks. Press button, back. Let's go. Let's go.
Extremely popular positions at the nationwide level, like ending the genocide in Gaza and a universal healthcare system, aren't even mainstream political discourse, despite massive demonstrations across every city. That's how far removed the government is from the needs of the people. In the UK, people have been jailed and had their homes raided simply for discussing protests over Zoom. In the US, demonstrations are met with violent crackdowns, and protesters risk losing their jobs or even their education for opposing government policies. Germany has outright banned certain forms of protest altogether. So while Westerners pride themselves...
Yeah, as awful as the situation was in Hong Kong, and even though there was a lot of police brutality, it's remarkable that the Hong Kong police never actually kill someone despite being shot at with bows and arrows and rocks thrown. That was one of the funniest aspects of like the Hong Kong protests, which is that like at the end of the day, they're fucking like in America, the BLM protests had more kills. Like the BLM protests in America had far more people die in the process than in Hong Kong. And it's like everybody fucking talks about the Hong Kong protests. Everybody. It's crazy. America is so violent. We are so goddamn violent that like it wasn't even just the cops killing motherfuckers. It was motherfuckers killing other motherfuckers too. Like we have people being like, it's not enough that we are under the oppressive thumb of a brutal police state. I want to take matters into my own hands. I need to kill some of these people too. I am going to deputize myself.
On freedom of speech, the reality is that speech without power is meaningless. It would be one thing if my argument was simply that neither America nor Chinese public sentiment affects policy, making it a wash. But that's not the case. Chinese governance is far more responsive to public needs than its Western counterparts.
What many Chinese have problem with Western media is the stereotypes about China. If you are content with stereotypes, you miss so many things. You know, if BBC broadcasts something, they are happy to always mention this communist dictatorship, this autocracy. No, actually, with this kind of label, you know, you cannot understand this China as it is. But if you watch BBC or CNN or read Economist and try to understand China, it will be a failure. It's impossible.
Multiple parties fight for political power. And
I will say that is one of the biggest problems, I think, even from the perspective of like, no, I don't say I think that's a major issue. I think that Western analysis of China requires an Orientalist framework that goes along with the attitudes that our State Departments have against China. China is a foreign adversary, so everything that China does is reflected from that exact same lens. And the problem is that makes it so that like a big chunk of the population is just completely and utterly blinded by what actually is going on in China. You just don't know. You don't know anything. I think that's a big problem. That's a big problem, even from the perspective of like the foreign policy analysts too. Like they also have their own bias framework when they're analyzing China. Because like I criticize China. I criticize China in the process of this video in terms of like its social repression, in terms of like its mass surveillance, right? Or we talked about, you know, its allegiance, its alliance with Pol Pot, which is not great. But ultimately, when your entire framework against China is starting point is like China is bad, it's scary, it's evil, okay? It's scary, it's bad, it's oppressive, it's evil, and everything that they're doing is like to maximize on that evil. Socialism with Chinese characteristics is when the Chinese government is doing scary, evil things. And the more scary, evil things they do, the more developed their socialism gets. And the more developed their Chinese characteristics gets. And you just end up not understanding what the fuck they're doing. And I think that also plays a role in like America taking L's on its own foreign policy. You've like willingly blinded yourself instead of being somewhat intellectually honest and intellectually curious about what their attempts are. Like taking some of the things that they're saying at face value instead of always constantly trying to approach it from a negative framework. I'll give you like a drama-focused, baby-brained approach. It's as if I'm China and my hater slop tubers are America in this process. And everything that they analyze, they look through the worst possible angle. And sometimes when you are purposely contrarian because you want to take the opposing viewpoint of everything that I'm fucking engaging in, then you end up defending genocide unconditionally and vociferously for 22 fucking months of said genocide, and you tarnish what remains of your reputation. You look like a fool. That's what happens with, like, you know, American analysts as well. That's the reason why so many people who are always like, oh, dude, it's China is this like secretive, monolithic, scary fucking country, will find themselves making the wrong policy decisions or the wrong analysis in general, like ghost cities. Ghost cities are the best example because a lot of brilliant Western foreign policy thinkers looked to Chinese development in ghost cities and said, look at these fucking idiots. They're just building fake cities made out of tofu dreg. These cities are going to collapse any moment now, right? 10 years ago, there were articles written extensively about like these ghost cities and how stupid it was that China was doing this. Look where we're at now. Now we look at those ghost cities that are occupied by tens of millions of people as marvels, right? Well, it turns out that is because of the biased framework we approach the subject matter on. Because in the Western world, you don't, oh my God, is it fucking up again? Jesus Christ. Ay, 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 ay. Is it back? Okay, the point I was trying to make is that it's just stuttered a second. Okay, for a second. The point I was trying to make is that if you look at Chinese central planning with American or with Western capitalist frameworks, you look at it and you're like, why the fuck are they building? Why are they building these cities? Homes are built for speculation as a speculative asset. They're not built for shelter. They're not built for like grand nation building and like city planning ahead of time. They're not built for like urbanization, rapid urbanization, and even development with like a future goal in mind. And that's how you find yourself duped. That's a perfect fucking example of Western capitalist biases playing a major role. This is like a 2018 Hasanabi take. I mean, it's true. Well, I was saying it in 2018 and I'm still saying it now because it's correct. Anyway, let's keep going.
Everyone voting on them as the only path to salvation to the long-suffering.
This is Eric Lee, a Shanghai entrepreneur, educated in America, and typical of a new, confident, outspoken political class.
At the moment, the Chinese, the party state, has proven an extraordinary ability to change. I mean, I make the joke, in America, you can change political parties, but you can't change policies. In China, you cannot change the party, but you can change policies. So in the 65 or 66 years, China is being run by one single party, yet the political changes that have taken place in China in this past 66 years have been wider and broader and greater than probably any other major country in modern memory.
So in that time, China ceased to be communist. Is that what you're saying?
Well, China is a market economy, and it's a vibrant market economy, but it is not a capitalist country. Here's why. There's no way a group of billionaires could control the Politburo as billionaires control American policymaking. So in China, you have a vibrant market economy, but capital does not rise above political authority. Capital does not have enshrined rights. In America, capital, the interest of capital and capital itself has risen above the American nation. The political authority cannot check the power of capital. And that's why America is a capitalist country, but China is not.
In China, you can't change the party, but the policies change all the time. The Chinese government is highly flexible and constantly adapts to public demands. According to Western research, trust and support for the Chinese government consistently hovers around 90%, an unheard of figure compared to most Western governments, which would be happy to get 40% approval ratings. You don't need a study to confirm this. If you're in the West, go outside and ask people how they feel about their government. Meanwhile, in China, the overwhelming majority support their government. This isn't due to repression. It's because people see tangible improvements in their lives. Why wouldn't they? Over the past few decades, life in China has consistently gotten better. Essential costs like water, electricity, and phone bills.
This part is also real, which is so interesting. That's the famous Harvard study that was conducted And obviously, Harvard has no investment in making China or specifically Chinese government look good and popular. They went in to confirm whether or not Chinese citizens were actually happy about their about the way that the Chinese government was ruling over them. And they straight up could not believe the results. Like CCP is more popular in China than any fucking Western country is in their own respective nations. Western government is in their own respective nations.
Housing is primarily for living, not speculative investment. Universal healthcare is guaranteed. Public transportation is extensive, efficient, and cheap. The fundamentals of daily life, things that people in the West constantly struggle with, are treated as human rights, not profit opportunities.
The funny thing is, if you told an American that, you would not be able to convince them it's not out of fear. We're so cucked. No, I know. It's cope. It's cope. It's just cope. And the worst aspect of it is that, as I repeat over and over again, we don't do any of the good shit and we only adopt the bad.
Where Americans scream into the void with no results, the Chinese government actively seeks opinion and implements changes based on real concerns. The government conducts extensive polling across provinces to identify key issues, and a rigorous civil service system ensures that only the most capable officials are promoted. Performance matters. If an official fails to deliver on poverty...
China, ironically enough, is the most abundance-pilled country on the fucking planet. And they literally are beholden to KPIs in their civil servant structure more than any other country I've ever fucking seen. Your local minister that's like tasked with fucking fixing a pothole didn't immediately fix a pothole after a bunch of citizens went in and complained about it. You're gone.
alleviation, or local governance, they are replaced. Unlike the West, where politicians fail upward, China's system enforces genuine accountability. Democratic participation in China exists in various forms, particularly at the local level. A prime example is the 12345 hotline, a 24/7 national complaint system where citizens can report concerns on everything from potholes to wage disputes. Every year, the system processes hundreds of millions of calls. It has a 96% resolution rate. The system ensures that problems are addressed swiftly, something unimaginable in most Western cities. In addition to elections at the local level, it's also common for local officials to give out their personal WeChat or phone numbers, allowing direct communication between citizens and government representatives. All of this results in a system that in practice is far more susceptible to the will of the majority than the illusion of democracy in the West. It's simply a different model of governance, one that prioritizes accountability and tangible results over empty rhetoric. Short of openly calling to overthrow the government, Chinese citizens have extensive, effective channels for addressing issues in their daily lives, arguably more so than in the West. Now that we've dispelled the misconceptions of the firewall, let's look at the firewall's advantages. Before we get into the advantages, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get back to it. The first of the advantages of China's internet firewall is the lack of violence, hyper-accessible pornography, toxicity, and division that plague Western social media. The current state of the internet in the West reflects a deeply unhealthy society. Take X, often described as the West's real-time information hub or the internet's town square. It has devolved into a breeding ground for far-right radicalization, misinformation, and outrage bait. Everyone's experience may vary, but for me, scrolling through X means seeing dead children and dead bodies from a Western bombing, a politician defending that bombing, pornography, a right-wing meme promoting race science, a viral video of students attacking a teacher in an American school, more porn, Elon Musk posting about some absurd right-wing take, and then an ad for Trump merchandise. Algorithms differ, but the common thread is rage, division, and nihilism. Every swipe brings a new reason to be angry, disgusted, or hopeless.
He didn't even talk about the other thing, which is film summarizations. Film summaries with like AI voice What is going on? Am I back? I think I'm back. All right. Type 2. Type 2. Type 2. Type 2. Type 2 if you see this. Okay. Good. I forgot the point I was making. I totally forgot the point I was fucking making. Oh, AI movie summaries, yeah.
Western social media is toxic. It actively fosters division along gender, racial, religious, and generational lines. The endless stream of violence, gambling, and disinformation is a symptom of a dysfunctional society. Now imagine trying to explain to a Chinese person that they're missing out on this. Why would anyone want their online space to be filled with outrage, hatred, and despair? In contrast, Chinese social media platforms offer a completely different experience, one that doesn't incentivize extremism, doom scrolling, or conflict. Again, if you're skeptical, I highly recommend downloading RedNote or looking at other Chinese social media apps and seeing for yourself. The second major advantage of China's internet firewall is the lack of disinformation poisoning society. In America, the sheer number of people disconnected from reality who are lost to conspiracy theories and ideological brain rot is staggering. It's honestly really depressing. It feels like every time I take an Uber or talk to someone above the age of 55, there's about a 50% chance that they'll start ranting about some ancient secret societies controlling the government or some other bizarre conspiracy.
Kobe Bryant was assassinated by the Clintons.
Which is why did the framework created by QAnon and Trump propaganda cause an innumerable amount of people to jump headfirst down the rabbit hole, endangering their safety, lives, and freedom.
We will not accept socialism as our economic and political system. Communism is communism. We will not accept communism. Australia has returned to becoming a prison island all over again. It's now a new penal colony as a prison. There was no racism in the United States. There was no racism. There was none.
These guys are so bored, man. Oh my God, we gotta fix white boredom. I've realized that's a big part of this puzzle. Like, this guy is just bored. He wants someone to talk to because his grandchildren won't talk to him. That's why he did a January 6th. Do you see that? It's fucking nutty. Like, this guy just needs someone to be like, America's not a racist country. I think the Chapo government hotline is a decent solution to a lot of the fucking anger and resentment that these dudes have. I've always been an advocate of like cops not being able to like fight back and just being like a vehicle to blow off steam, you know what I mean? Like when you do protests and stuff, like cops should not be able to brutalize you. They should just like eat it to a certain degree, you know what I mean? That's what melee only. Disarm the police, disarm the protesters, melee only. Duke it out. 1v1. Not even like 2v1, 3v1. I'm just saying, like, every now and then they bring out like one cop. He has to fight hand-to-hand combat, like a little bit of mutual combat. Isn't your fan from Turkey want to talk about that? Or cops should just eat it? Are you fucking insane? You're dumb. I mean, first of all, I'm making a joke. Okay? I'm not being sincere. Well, I am sincere when I say cops should not brutalize protesters. That's obvious. But mutual combat would be a joking theory solution to a lot of the fucking anger and resentment that these people have. Okay? You just have like one guy. You just have one guy that engages in like some kind of mutual combat. They blow off steam. Maybe they get their ass beat. You know, all of a sudden, problem solved. Also, isn't your fam from Turkey want to talk about that? I do. I talk about it all the time, dude. literally all the fucking time. If you attack a cop, you're done. Yeah, unless you're one of these guys. Unless you're these guys. It's such a funny fucking stupid ass right winger coming in here. Lo and behold, while we're watching January 6th footage to be like, if you attack a cop, you're done. Yeah, unless you're doing it at the behest of the president, and at which point they will release you from prison and even advocate that you should stay a free man, even if you have child pornography on your fucking computer, if they found the CSAM in your computer hard drives in the process of the January 6th investigation. That's this administration, dumb fuck.
Not going to take away our trophy bear. We will never let our country go to the globalists. George Soros, you can go to hell.
Jesus is the king of this.
He's our king, and Trump is our president. Yes, ma'am.
Disinformation is widespread, and the internet in the West is designed to pit people against each other, with algorithms that amplify negativity and outrage. Society is fractured, and large segments of the population no longer live in a shared reality. Now compare this with Chinese social media, it's a completely different world. The content is overwhelmingly positive, and you simply don't see the unhinged conspiracy cults gaining traction. Why is this? Because the poor material conditions and lack of education that breed such radicalization don't exist nearly as much in China. In the West, people's lives are deteriorating, both materially and spiritually, so they turn to fantasy explanations for their suffering. They're told capitalism isn't the problem, so they invent magical scapegoats. In China, the basic needs are met, public services function, and the education system actually works. As a result, the psychological conditions that fuel mass delusion are virtually non-existent. Now let's get to the third benefit, the economic and strategic necessity of the firewall. Beyond public discourse, one of the most important benefits of China's internet firewall is the massive economic advantage it provides. Even if you have disagreed with everything I've said so far, the economic aspect alone is reason enough to have this firewall. Platforms like Google, Amazon, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are not just social media or search engines, they are critical infrastructure in the modern world. They dominate commerce, data collection, and digital services, siphoning productivity, revenue, talent, and sovereignty from every country that depends on them. For nations in Europe, Latin America, and Africa, the absence of domestic equivalents to these platforms has led to stagnation or non-existent tech sectors. The US controls these digital monopolies, meaning that the revenue generated in these foreign markets...
Like, that's not even wrong. I didn't even really think about it like that. I am in favor of having, at least like giving countries sovereignty over YouTube and Google and shit like that. And I think YouTube, Google, like they do play ball with other nations at the end of the day. But like ultimately that is true. I never had actually thought about that, where it's like, a lot of the tech sector is here in my backyard, literally, because of this. Should have let him cook. Yeah, techno-feudalism
is funneled back to America instead of being reinvested locally. The impact of this cannot be overstated. These platforms act like digital tax collectors, skimming off a percentage of every transaction, collecting data on every user and ensuring that major technological developments benefits America first. Take Europe as an example. Outside of Spotify, the continent has no global tech giants that can compete with the US or China. If Europe had its own Amazon, Google, and Uber, companies tailored to serve the European market, there would be stronger innovation hubs, higher wages, and a greater ability to retain talent rather than losing them to Silicon Valley. Instead, European nations have become dependent on US corporations, which cripples their technological and economic sovereignty. China recognized this early on and refused to become another American digital colony. By restricting US platforms, China ensured that domestic alternatives like Baidu, WeChat, Alibaba, and Douyin could thrive, keeping billions of dollars in profits inside China rather than handing them to US corporations. This decision allowed China to build a thriving tech sector, with major innovation hubs like Shenzhen and Hangzhou, rivaling Silicon Valley. It's not just about money, but also sovereignty. Just as roads, electricity, and water are essential utilities, today's digital infrastructure functions the same way, except that they're privately owned by US monopolies. If you want to communicate, work, or do business anywhere in the world, or even operate as a sovereign government, you're forced to rely on these monopolies for their services. Even official government agencies in foreign countries rely on Google, Microsoft, and Amazon Web Services, all US-based corporations with direct ties to American government. The United States actively weaponizes these platforms to advance its geopolitical interests. Billions of dollars are funneled into propaganda, regime change efforts, and surveillance, all facilitated through US-controlled social media and tech giants. The idea that these platforms are simply neutral tools is laughable. Facebook and Twitter have worked directly with US intelligence agencies to influence elections, shape political discourse, and suppress narratives that challenge American dominance. Without the firewall, China's economy, political stability, and digital sovereignty would be at the mercy of American corporations and the US government. Even if you still don't like China, you can still understand why it's an obvious choice for the government not to fuck themselves, right? Now that we've laid it all out, let's add it up. So overall, you have an internet that operates in the exact same capacity as the Western one, minus pornography, extreme violence, and gambling. There are a select few topics where information is not readily available. Profits are kept in the country. The internet is not beholden to a foreign country. The Western internet is easily accessible by VPN if still desired. Society is not rampant with misinformation and division. And the internet is still an effective tool and net benefit to society. Even if you still aren't convinced of its benefits on a personal level.
I mean, I'm too Ameri-brained. It's just, that's what it is. Maybe I'd have a different attitude if I grew up in China or something. But honestly, if I, because I grew up in Turkey and then, came to America, I can't get over the lack of, the speech controls and the mass surveillance. Even though one will say, Hasan, we have that here in America, and it's like, yeah, we do, and I actively fight back against that here. The reality of the matter is, even though my endless push to try and educate people and advocate for Palestinians, which is in direct odds with the American foreign policy apparatus, is falling on deaf ears for the most part. I still have the freedom to be able to do it, and I don't. I just would not be able to. I would not be able to have that freedom whatsoever in China. And I think that is like, your entire career is around online political speech. I want a stable society. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously there'd be a lot less things to fucking criticize. But in any case, we're losing that here too. So if getting death threats for doing it still counts as freedom, I mean, true. There is definitely that side of it as well. I just can't get over the notion of not being able to openly criticize stuff.
You must admit, at the very least, it is a positive for the country's perspective. The financial aspect alone is a no-brainer. China is arguably the only country in the world.
Name one thing you'd be able to say in China. China's mass surveillance initiative against the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang under the auspices of combating Islamic radical terror and separatist movements was entirely unacceptable and a litany of human rights violations. It was the most it was the closest China has gotten to being like the United States of America. That is not a thing that I'd be able to say in China. It's not. You may want to talk to Uyghurs before making claims, brother. Come on. Hasan liberal arc, Bad Empanada was right. That's so funny because Bad Empanada also agrees with me on this and on many other issues as well. It's like that's the hilarious side of it, even though he is the arbiter of all things socialism. Every year, the bads about our Western system of internet freedom are getting worse and worse. I want to believe that material conditions will fix most of it, but the richest people in society are enabling more slop. I agree.
that has complete digital sovereignty. What a tremendous advantage to keep. The US wouldn't allow a foreign government's internet to run their main information sphere, especially one that openly wants to overthrow it. That's common sense. Look at it in the same light for China's interests. Can you find a Chinese person that likes the Western style? Of course. There are Chinese people who really love the West and the values of hyper-individualism, and maybe don't share the collectivist culture of Chinese society. I have met some people in Shanghai who feel this way, but apart from the nuisance of downloading a VPN, there were no tangible things that they could mention about the Western internet apart from the cultural illusion of freedom it presents. In China, policies change all the time. The West doesn't change. What good is the freedom to say anything unbarred all the time if nothing ever changes and your society is incredibly divided as a result? Believe it or not, people living in a country experiencing a golden age where everything is getting better and who will objectively run the 21st century don't feel the need to overthrow their government. Apart from NGO members in the West paid to think this way, 99% of Chinese people are chill working within the current system through the methods I mentioned to fix the
Like, dude, this has got to be a bot, right? Like, it can't be real, right? This has to be a bot. Döner mi yiyorsun abi? Abi Türkiye'de inanamıyorum yani. Of. Like, I just addressed that, man. I just addressed it. And you're still fucking asking. Like, the camps also no longer exist. Holy fuck. No, he just keeps spamming. What about the Uyghur camps in China? That's a big issue too. Uyghur camps, Uyghur camps, Uyghur camps, Uyghur camps. And then the last time he asked again is after I had just gotten done addressing
tangible issues in their life. They are perfectly content with the Chinese ecosystem. For those people who want access to the Western style, getting a VPN is really not that hard, and it's really not a big barrier to access.
Wait, what? This guy had the audacity to say that I praise Japan fascists and shit on Hassan liberal arc bad and banana was right. White socialism, you mean? Shit on China, socialist while simping for Japan fascists? What? I have way more smoke for Japan than China. What the fuck are you talking about? There has never been a moment where I've pointed to Japanese governance as like what we should implement here. The fuck? What? Every fucking day of the goddamn week, I'm using China as a great example. This is ironically another. So many people just don't listen to fucking anything I say on this broadcast. It's crazy. Like, look at this link. This was me in the process of talking about China, criticizing Japan.
Access. All of the pros I just mentioned far outweigh the cons for the baseline internet that Chinese people access. There are also considerations amongst the Chinese government to allow an unrestricted internet in the future once the obvious threats.
I have way more smoke for Japan and China. Let me book another ticket to Tokyo. Oh my god, 7-Elevens are so good. Why the fuck are you still chirping? I'm literally coming to China. I'm coming to your country before the end of this year. I was supposed to go next month, and Will and Austin pushed it back. So we're going in November. What the hell? What the fucking heliante? I'm just gonna stay there. It's gonna be cold.
Competition and negative foreign influence have died down. I'm not saying that the Chinese system is meant for every country, but for China, at the current moment, Firewall is a great advantage. Please like and subscribe.
Bad and Banana fans who engage with any of his drama shit and not just history vids are such loser, and Hassan pretends they show up at protests because he met one singular Bad and Banana fan, but most just do this in BS and pretend it's practice. It's fine. The Bad and Banana stuff is obviously going to blow over, as it always does, because at the end of the day, if I was legitimately at odds with I don't know, serious emancipation